You wouldn't know it from perusing my channel, but I've played a lot of games that aren't Assassin's Creed. I've never counted, but I'd wager I've played about 200 different games in my life, and of those 200 games, 161 of them were played in the last 9 years on my PlayStation account, and I've collected every single trophy in those 161 games. I'm something of a completionist in many walks of my life, video games included. But if you look up discussions around completionism in video games, a vast majority of what you're going to find shares a common theme. The idea of completionism as an addiction that takes the fun out of playing video games. And people who say that are 100% right. Trophies, achievements, and the 100% symbol on your save file are all arbitrary virtual icons that for some people cause real and meaningful harm. There will be no point in this video where I encourage anyone to start collecting trophies or achievements, because that isn't my point here. I do think there is a common mentality that forms in the minds of a lot of completionists. The mentality that the achievements start to matter more than the games themselves, and this can lead to addictive behaviors, playing games you don't want to play, and burning yourself out on the ones you actually do. But while that mentality is a common side effect of completionism, I don't personally think it's an inevitable one. I'm always surprised to see how many videos online are about how brutal or painful or torturous it was even to 100% a game, because even with long grinds like Red Dead 2 or incredibly difficult skill checks like the MC5, I've never felt like I was suffering through a platinum. In fact, I fell out of love with video games for a long time, and it was completing games that helped me find that love again. Now, obviously, trophies don't have some inherent ability to make gaming fun, or else they wouldn't actively ruin games for some people. Clearly, there are other factors at play that trophy hunting just helped me recognize. And those factors are what I want to talk about today. This will be a more personal video than I usually make. I want to talk about why I stopped loving games, how trophy hunting brought that love back, and my hope is that some of the tools that I've built up by being a trophy hunter resonate for some of you whether or not you even intend to complete games at all. When I was a kid, I would always play games on easy mode. I'd pop a disc I rented from Blockbuster Video into my GameCube and do everything I could to get the most friction-free experience possible. And if somebody at school told me about a cheat code that let me turn on God mode or skip levels entirely, it was all the better. I didn't have anything to prove to anybody, I didn't feel a need to play the game the quote-unquote right way. Having fun was just easy back then. One of my favorite games of that era was Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time. It took me literal years to beat, something that seems silly looking back because in hindsight, it's actually a really easy game. But I was proud of myself for finishing it, and I was excited to move on to the next entry. Unfortunately, it was not to be. Prince of Persia took a wild tone shift with its sequel, Warrior Within. While my parents only raised an eyebrow at the single, tasteful sex scene in Sands of Time, the metal thongs and decapitations of the sequel were beyond what they were fine with. So I had nothing to do but wait until they decided I was old enough to play the game, along with the final entry in the trilogy, Two Thrones. When I was 12 or 13, they relented, and when I finally beat the games after all those years, I found that I felt almost nothing. I was feeling that nothingness a lot around that time. I was struggling to motivate myself to care about my schoolwork, I wasn't making an effort to spend time with my friends, and hobbies that gave me a sense of comfort and joy in the past suddenly felt hollow. At the time, the word I was given to identify this feeling was anhedonia. Anhedonia, in simple terms, is when you feel numb to pleasure, and is often associated with losing interest in things that you used to enjoy. Anhedonia is usually a symptom of a larger problem, and while I won't go into specifics for my case, I'll say that those preteen years leave a lot of kids confused and lonely, and it's easy for negative feelings to take root. Many parts of my life were impacted in a pretty major way by these feelings, especially when it came to how I consumed media. I was still reading, watching TV, and playing video games, but more and more I realized I was doing these things to pass the time rather than to enjoy myself. Since individual books, games, and movies weren't giving me the dopamine hits they used to, I started consuming as much media as possible to get as many smaller dopamine hits in as I could. And the more consuming media became about filling this endless backlog of stuff I was told I had to experience, the more these games, books, and movies started to blend together and lose their meaning. And especially in the case of video games, I had to accept I just wasn't having fun anymore. Now let's be clear, that's not inherently a tragedy. Video games are not necessary to live, and it's okay to just stop loving certain things in your life. During that time, I learned a lot about myself and what does make me happy. For starters, I grew up. It can't be understated how much it helps to just not be 13 years old. So if for whatever reason you are 13 years old and you're watching this, sorry. But on a more practical level, the most important thing I learned about myself was that I am too focused on my long-term goals, and if I don't keep myself in check, I will do the bare minimum to cut every corner I can to reach those goals. As a kid, I would study just enough to get 90% because an A is an A, and I'd read the exact number of books I needed to get my free personal pan pizza. But living like this sucks. It sucks not to care about the things you do every day, putting in the minimal necessary effort to reach your goals. What I learned, with no small amount of help from others, is that I enjoy life a lot more when I give myself consistent, short-term goals to focus on outside of my long-term goals. I'm one of those people who gets a lot out of keeping a planner, noting things in my journal, and gamifying day-to-day activities. As meaningless as it might feel to someone else, something as small as putting a little check mark next to every task on my planner I successfully complete really motivates me to put effort into the things I'm doing every day. Suddenly, I was making my bed, going for runs, drinking enough water, doing all the things that before would make me say, why bother? I was spending time with friends, reading, cooking, exercising, and generally just enjoying life more. But applying these tools to gaming really wasn't on my radar, and it happened kind of without me intending it to in 2016 when I bought a used PS4 for $150, which was a huge purchase for me at the time. Along with the console, I got MGS5, Uncharted 4, Bloodborne, and Assassin's Creed Unity. And yes, I know one of these is not like the others, but honestly, I don't think MGS5 is that bad. At first, I was playing these games like I used to, ignoring any content that wouldn't rush me to the credits because in my head, playing a game was still getting to the credits, and I was feeling it, that desire to cut corners and just beat the games as fast as I could. But I'd worked too hard on myself to allow that. Either I was going to find a way to care about every game I played, or I was going to drop games and dedicate my time to hobbies I could care about. I tried journaling, I tried dedicating time for gaming in my schedule, and I tried setting personal goals for each play session, all techniques that had worked for other hobbies, but weren't really clicking for games. The 4 titles I had just felt so different, so I struggled to find a method of implementing short-term goals that felt consistent for the needs of each game. Then, I finally acknowledged one very obvious commonality each of them had, which had been pinging at me constantly since I bought the console. And so I figured it couldn't hurt to try using the in-game trophies as my short-term goals. Instead of zeroing in on the tasks that were necessary to hit credits, I would work on some of the trophies and explore these optional ways to play the game that in the past would have made me say, why bother? Instead of turning my nose at higher difficulty levels, optional content, and hidden bosses, if there was a trophy to do it, I would do it. And as weird and counterintuitive as it might sound, this worked for me. Just as keeping a planner helped remind me that every day of my life could matter if I put effort into it, trophies helped me take on the mindset that every side activity and alternate path could matter if I wasn't so obsessed with playing in the fastest and most efficient way. Suddenly, I had 4 platinum trophies, and I felt immersed in games in a way I hadn't since I was a child. I wanted to take this mindset to my old PS3, to go through some games that I had played in the past, but didn't really dig into emotionally. I played through all the God of War challenge rooms for the first time. I finally did all of the obtuse quests in Dark Souls, but most importantly, I went back to Warrior Within and Two Thrones. I played the games with no intention to rush, I fully learned the mechanics, and I took my time. And I felt that excitement to play them that eluded me as a kid. When I beat those games for the second time, I remembered them. They didn't just leave my brain. I got myself to care about the act of playing those games. Obviously, it wasn't the trophies that did this. They just helped guide me to the mindset that I needed. I was playing games like a kid again. I was exploring and experimenting instead of trying to find the fastest route to the credits. And however bizarre it was that a checklist of arbitrary in-game tasks is what did this for me, I was having fun playing games again. And that's really what matters. So if I found trophies to be so beneficial to me, why am I not telling you to go out and start a trophy or achievement hunting account of your own? Well, while trophies reinvigorated my love of games, that is not the effect they have on everyone. And I'd say more often than not, discussions on completionism revolve around the common scenario where a person feels the need to do everything in a game to the detriment of their own experience. Even in communities dedicated to celebrating trophy or achievement hunting, you're always going to find people seeking advice on how to handle it when it starts to ruin games for them. Circling back to the concept of anhedonia, I was watching this video on the Healthy Gamer GG channel where a paper was discussed called The Computational Structure of Consummatory Anhedonia. One concept that got brought up was the idea that the closer you are to achieving your goals, the more dopamine you get from individual experiences. An example used in the video by Dr. K is how the pleasure derived from completing the final assignment of a school year is significantly elevated compared to the first assignment, even if they're equally difficult. Dr. K phrases it like this: if your numerator is your level of achievement, or the things you have achieved, and your denominator is what you want to achieve, a smaller denominator means more dopamine output, because each individual achievement is making more ground toward your overall goals. And keep in mind, I am simplifying that. I bring this up because I think it's a good way to frame not only why trophy hunting works for me, but also why it doesn't work for others. When I started 100% in games, my denominator dropped. Instead of trying to play a dozen games, I was trying to get everything I could out of one. Another person could be in the exact same position and feel the opposite. My primary goal when playing a game is to do everything I can in it, and I have no higher goal beyond completion of that one game. But some people find that their primary goal becomes increasing their gamer score or getting a certain number of platinum trophies. Not only in their case has achievement or trophy hunting failed to lower their denominator in the form of number of games they need to complete to something more manageable, but it's also made reaching their goals way harder and therefore made each individual trophy on the way to those goals even less satisfying. Trophy hunting is a tool, one that works well for how my brain is wired specifically, but just a tool all the same. What matters isn't the tools used, but the purpose they serve, and there are two major things that trophies help me do that I've been able to identify. Now luckily, even if your brain isn't weirdly taken by collecting virtual badges like mine is, you don't have to be a trophy hunter. There are so many videos online about the methods people use when they start to fall out of love with a hobby, whether it be gaming, reading, or anything else. I watched a ton of these while making this video, and I found that a lot of people found their own methods for doing the same two primary things that I try to achieve through collecting trophies. Firstly, a lot of people benefit from limiting the number of games or books they're paying attention to at a given time. BBK Dragoon talks about focusing all your attention on one game. Daryl Does Games created an Excel spreadsheet to help filter out games from his backlog, and Backlog Baldy talks about removing games you feel obligated to play to make your list more realistic for yourself. Second, a lot of people benefit from creating short-term goals and rewards to keep themselves engaged. Answer in Progress talks about how the simple act of filling out bubble cards to track reading per day helps motivation. Mark Maxwell talks about keeping journal entries in the form of voice memos to stay on top of the game they're playing, and Wheezy Waiter and Herbal both talk about creating self-imposed challenges while reading and gaming respectively. I have the exact same objectives as these creators. It just so happens that my method of achieving these objectives is, well, achievements. Trophies limit my scope to one game at a time, eliminating the concept of a backlog from my life and encouraging me to give every game the attention it deserves. They give me consistent, short-term goals that remind me there are milestones I can reach beyond just hitting credits, making each play session valuable to me. And for me, it just works. Again, I am totally aware that trophies have the opposite effect for some people, and that's why it's great that there's so much content out there going over techniques that might resonate more with you. I only scratched the surface of that content, but I put all the videos I watched in the description, and I included a little blurb next to each one explaining some of the stuff I got out of those videos. For me, I found trophy hunting as a tool that made me love games again, and I believe it is worth searching for the tools that mesh with you. That doesn't mean it'll be trophy hunting for you, and I imagine it probably won't be any kind of completionism for you. But no matter what tools you find, you deserve to spend your time on things that you truly care about. Okay, so trophy hunting isn't for everyone, but if you want to try it or you're already a completionist and you want tips on how to keep it sustainable, I can talk a bit about my own experiences here. There are two big components of completionism, trophy hunting especially, that you can't get trapped in if you want to keep it healthy. First off, you can't care about the leaderboards. I'm not saying this to judge anyone, but when I look at the top of these leaderboards, I don't see many games I would ever actually want to play. It's mostly shovelware games that take a few seconds to complete, usually with multiple regional versions of the same game platinumed one after the other. I've got 161 completed games on my account from nearly 10 years of regular play. The people with the most trophies on PSN have 14,000 platinums. To catch them, you'd have to dedicate yourself to constant play and focus on monotonous 10-second games, and at that point, video gaming just isn't even the hobby anymore. My second point might feel a little hypocritical, but you can't be married to the idea of 100%ing every single game you play. I know that I have a 100% profile, and I won't pretend that I don't like that I have a 100% profile, because I like the fact that every game I've played has been one that I've enjoyed enough to do that. But I can't pretend I'm entitled to maintaining that 100%. At any time, factors beyond my control can take it away. Sony could discontinue trophies tomorrow. Servers on a game I'm playing can go down. A game can come out with impossible DLC trophies. I have the platinum for Marvel Rivals, which is a multiplayer shooter. NetEase could easily decide to make a new set of trophies next year for hitting top 500 rank or something, and I simply wouldn't be able to do that. I played a small Filipino indie game called Until Then around when it launched, and at that point there was only one person in the world on PSN profiles who had the platinum. I went for it anyway. It ended up being shockingly hard, but I enjoyed my time with it enough that I decided to write the guide for it on that site. But I had no way of knowing if I'd ever be able to finish it, and if I'd be able to keep that 100%, because that's just not a goal that you can sustain forever. A huge part of why I have a 100% trophy list is that I am in a privileged position in my life to own a PC, PS5, and a Switch, and I tend to reserve the games I'm really excited to play for the PS5, which means I am most likely to 100% those games. The weird multiplayer games my friends want to play or the experimental stuff they ask about, I play that on PC, and I promise you, I would not have 100%ed Escape from Tarkov if we were playing that game on PS5. I'm lucky in that I'm someone who always knows exactly what game they want to play. I know a lot of people struggle with that, hence the many videos online about analysis paralysis. I just don't have that problem. Instead, I need to check off boxes in a notebook to feel like anything in life is worth it. There's trade-offs, we all work differently. I'm able to platinum games because I'm someone who likes to dig in my heels and fully commit to a game I know I'm going to like. That's how I like to play. If you're someone who likes to be a gaming nomad and dip your toes into a lot of different games, that's equally valid. But if you fall more into that camp, completionism probably won't be as fun for you. All that is to say, you really have to play games because you want to play them, not because you want to 100% them. As we've discussed, for gaming as a hobby to be sustainable, you need to be in the hobby to play games, not play a certain number of games or get a certain gamer score or anything like that. And I've been able to consistently stick with that mindset for 160 games. However, as I said, I have completed 161, and there was one time I did fail myself. In 2019, I played Monster Hunter World. The Monster Hunter games are about, as you can probably guess, hunting monsters, and each monster you fight has a minute chance of being either abnormally large or abnormally small. Killing these monsters nets you a crown or a mini crown, and each game has a trophy for getting every single crown in it. I hated this. I didn't have any fun. I spent 4 months and well over 100 hours grinding just for these RNG trophies, barely paying attention to the game. I wasn't following any of the advice I've said in this video. I can't even blame it on wanting to keep my account at 100% because for the first 3 years of having this account, it wasn't at 100%. I went back and cleaned up a bunch of old trophies later that year. I was really just making my life harder for no good reason. I love third-person action games. I really liked the design of the monsters, and the game was incredibly well made. So why did I hate it? I hated it because my goal was collecting trophies, not playing the game. The cardinal sin of trophy hunting was committed. But why did this happen then, 1 out of the 161 times I played a game on that account? Well, the big difference in my motivation was that I was playing Monster Hunter because my friends asked me to, not because I wanted to. I built up the game in my head as some kind of obligation to reach the end of, and in doing so, I ruined my own time. Obviously, that wasn't my friend's fault. I just put myself in the worst possible mindset. Because the thing is, as long as the grind was, it was still a grind spent fighting the monsters over and over. I was doing the exact same stuff I would have been doing anyways if I was playing normally for fun. I let my focus on finishing the game over enjoying it destroy my experience, and it was an entirely mental thing. The things I was actually doing in the game would have been exactly the same regardless. If you really don't enjoy a game, you should never try to 100% it. And I know that might be hard to take coming from me, but it really is okay to quit when you aren't having fun. I would have enjoyed those 4 months of my life way more if I did. Since then, I've been able to reframe my relationship with Monster Hunter into something healthier. I knew my problems with it were problems with me, not the franchise, so I went back to the series and made sure I kept my focus on enjoying it day to day instead of only focusing on the platinum. I started spending time on the old school Monster Hunter servers, which are active and let you run multiplayer in the first 2 generations, and I bought Wilds at launch and enjoyed every second of that platinum. Admittedly, Wilds is streamlined and less time-consuming than World, but the point is that I found Monster Hunter to be a fantastic experience when I was playing it for fun, which is how I should play all games, and miserable when the trophies became the point. I bring up leaderboards and 100% accounts and playing games just for trophies because that all ties back into what we were saying earlier. The further your overall goals stray from the game itself, the less fun the game becomes. The goal has to be playing the game. If the trophies, leaderboards, or your 100% status become the point instead, it's time to reassess. Your main experience has to be the joy of playing and fully exploring really fun games that you want to play. And that, at the very least, is what I managed to do for 160 of my games. I read The Myth of Sisyphus by Albert Camus for the first time a few months ago, and it's one of the 2 books I've ever read that I needed a guide for, the other being James Joyce's Ulysses. It is short, but it's incredibly dense and incredibly of its time in many ways, so if you're not up to date on philosophical schools of thought of the early 1900s, it's not going to be light reading. But while I don't think everyone in a modern era would necessarily vibe with it, I think almost everyone has heard the final line. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. In simple terms, Camus asserts that the absurd in existence is found at the intersection of humanity's search for meaning and the fact that it cannot be found. He wants to determine if life can be worth living, even if we can't find an answer to it. When he says one must imagine Sisyphus happy, he is asserting that all of us are rolling that boulder up that hill with the knowledge that it will fall down on the other side. And it is his belief that a person can find joy and value in pushing the boulder without needing to feel like there will be divine reward or release at the top. Now, it's kind of comical to compare video game completionism to a staple philosophical text of the 1940s, but we're having fun here. It doesn't matter if you're talking about trophy hunting or filling your backlog or whatever else. If you have your eyes set on the peak of the mountain, it's hard to be happy. And I trophy hunt because it helps me focus on the boulder. It helps remind me that I love pushing the boulder. That's the part of it that I like, regardless of what I find at the top. Now, it's almost certain that I won't do this forever. Sony could get rid of trophies, or more likely, I'll just stop getting the same enjoyment of it eventually, just as games lost some luster for me back when I was a kid. And then one of 2 things will happen. I'll find a new thing that makes me love the boulder again, or I'll stop gaming. And either option is okay. I really like video games, but some people have told me that they are completionists because they want to extend their time with games because they feel like they have nothing else. If gaming is something you do because it's comfortable but not something you love anymore, maybe it's good to leave that comfort zone and try other things. I'm a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, albeit an awful one, and I've run some marathons, although again, not very fast. I go to a book club. That part I am good at. I do read a book a week. I have a career where I get to help people, and I have this fun little YouTube hobby. And I'm not saying all those things to brag and say, look at all this stuff I do. I'm just saying that I really did struggle to enjoy things when I was a kid. But I learned. I figured out what works for me, even if one of the things that works for me is as weird as collecting virtual badges in my video games. It makes me happy. You deserve to figure out what works for you. All this talk about anhedonia and absurdist philosophy is fun to go over, but it really is simpler than that. If you're spending your free time on something, it should be something that makes you happy. And if the things that used to make you happy just don't anymore, for what it's worth, I can say a lot of us have been in that boat. Chat about it with the people you trust. Chat with a mental health professional if you can, but really do try to prioritize caring about the things you do every day, because you do deserve that. For me, it's been more than worth it. So if you see me online grinding away at the large crowns in Monster Hunter World and you start feeling concerned, don't worry. You must imagine me happy. That's all I have for today. I know this was a different kind of video than I usually make, and it felt weird talking about myself so much, but it's a good time. Indie game of the month I wanted to showcase is No One Lives Under the Lighthouse, which is a really artfully made retro aesthetic horror game that I played, I think, a couple years ago at this point, but I really did have a good time with it. I'm already working on a video about the Metal Gear Solid series, so hopefully I'll be putting that out in June, but that's really everything that I have planned for right now. Otherwise, have a great day, and take care of yourself.